Hey, I'm Jeff Perkins. These are the Soundstripe Sessions. This is a podcast about the space between inspiration and execution. That's where the real story lives. We sit down with world-class creators and storytellers to unpack the craft, the creative decisions, the roadblocks, and the breakthroughs that shaped their best work. For anyone who makes things and wants to make them better. Hey everyone, today our guest is Nicole Shapiro. She is a Toronto-based cinematographer and video producer who runs NSHAP's Production, a company whose client list spans Mazda, Adidas, MLSE, the Toronto Raptors, and Canada Basketball. She came to filmmaking through an unexpected door, a kinesiology degree, and a pivot to capturing basketball videos in 2019. She's since built a reputation for commercial work and music videos that punch well above their budget. Nicole, welcome to Soundstripe Sessions. Good to see you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So before we get into what you do as a filmmaker, let's talk a little bit about your origin story. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what got you into filmmaking in the first place.
I'm based in Toronto, Canada. And what got me into this whole world was a mix of sport and weddings. So I have a kinesiology degree as my wonderful intro. And essentially, in my fourth year, I was the athletic therapist for the men's basketball team at my university. I went to Laurier. And we had two ATs on the team. So whenever it was time for games, the other AT would kind of take over and I would be running around with my camera and just getting highlight mixtapes of all the guys and the games and stuff. And unlike a lot of, I guess, US colleges or even Toronto universities, Laurier didn't really have a sports media program. They didn't have any kind of funnel that was, getting the students involved in capturing any of the sport teams. It was just kind of volunteer based. There was like one or two photographers that everyone kind of knew and they would bounce around between all the different sports, but it was purely just like volunteers for the fun of it. And slowly I realized that that was where my passion was, because I didn't really pay too much attention to my thesis that year, and I was just so invested in editing and trying to figure out if this is what my actual calling was supposed to be. So after I graduated that summer, I did two internships at the same time to really try to figure out which path I was going to go on. So I did one at like a wedding internship company that did video and photo, and I learned so much about DSLRs and capturing audio and a little bit about lighting, mostly about editing and, the almost a little bit more about the business side of things. And then I did another internship that was more strength and conditioning focused. So I was training, athletes like junior level hockey, football, that kind of thing. And even while I was doing the gym stuff, I was thinking to myself like, oh, they could do this for their marketing, or this angle would be cool. And I'm like missing the rep count of how many reps this guy has left on his squat rack. So yeah, my focus was clearly geared towards the creative side. And yeah, basically the Coles notes is when COVID hit, I lost all my weddings. Like I had a bunch lined up and then that kind of killed everything. And following that, it was a big pivot again from like the sports side to the weddings, then weddings to commercial. And the commercial side has just been like a wonderful space to be in. And the sport side, to bring it all the way full circle, has always kind of followed me through my journey. Like even some of the names you listed, like doing some work for Toronto Tempo as well. They're the new, like, Toronto's WNBA team. We just got our first WNBA team, which is exciting. So yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff with like women's sports and sports in general, sport brands, like fashion brands. It always comes back to that. And I always feel like kind of connected, like I belong in the room when it comes to like a sport film or something in that niche. So yeah, that's kind of my origin story.
That's really cool. And so they just gave you a camera and said, "Oh, shoot some footage while you're, you know, doing your training job on the side, just go shoot and because we need that footage for our website, our social media page, our YouTube page. Is that
Yeah,
it?
it was kind of a mix. It was like I had a camera. My first camera was the Sony A6500, which they don't even make anymore because of the overheating issues. And yeah, basically, I had that camera because I was like filming some of my cousin's weddings at first, and then like I started to just do some like fun experimental stuff with friends and music videos, and it was very like hobbyist, there was no thought about actually making this a career until I realized, oh yeah, there's a whole wedding industry that, actually benefits off of this. So it purely just started as something for fun. And yeah, they kind of just like let me run with it. And I was actually very fortunate to be part of that basketball team because the following summer, the coach was from France. So he organized this like I don't know if it was like a round robin or if it was some sort of smaller I guess like competition between some of the schools that were out there. And the whole team, as well as me and the manager of the team, got flown out, and we were like there for probably a week and a half, and I was just documenting like the whole thing. So that was like a true test of run and gun, capture everything when you're not at home, like just bring the bare bones gear and see what you can make. And that was also like a huge realization that it's like, whoa, my camera can take me really cool places. So yeah, that also obviously was very exciting and, was intriguing of like, okay, what else can I do with this? So
But
yeah.
no film school. So no, did you ever go to film school or take any?
YouTube University is where where I
Wow.
went. I learned a lot on YouTube. I definitely learned a lot through just like being on set in smaller roles. If I was filming behind the scenes or I was PAing a lot, and then I started to like second AC a couple times. But yeah, just pivoting into that commercial world, like I learned more about the hierarchy and like what the director does, what the producer does, what are all these roles, and it was just kind of learned by trial and error. But yeah, I never went to film school, so
At one point, did you think, oh, this hobby I could actually make a living doing it? I mean, when was that? Because you obviously went to school for maybe a more practical degree and something that
yeah.
there's tons of places you could be a physical therapist or a trainer,
Yeah.
but you kind of just said, like how do you find that path in film when you don't come out of a film school?
A lot of it had to do with social media, honestly. So it was one was social media and two was weddings for sure, because um the very first, I guess, video that I ever got paid for was probably my cousin's wedding, my cousin Jennifer, and her mom, so my aunt. I remember we were like in her kitchen in Barrie, and she was like, like you can make a living off of this. You know that, right? Like you can actually charge other couples and like people to do this. And in my head, I was like, you're being biased. You're my aunt. You're trying to say like, oh, like this was so good. I love, and it's like your own daughter's wedding video, so you're probably so excited. But she had a point. She was like, if you really like focus on this, maybe you could make like a little business out of it. So it started becoming something that was more of like a side hustle where I was working like a bunch of random part-time jobs that weren't relevant to the filmmaking space. Like I was a cashier, I was working as like a merch salesperson at a concert venue here in the summers. And then on the side, I was also doing fitness classes. So I was like a fitness instructor. So I was just doing all these like random things just to try to pay bills at first, and then slowly started to like drop each job when the wedding side of things picked up again. So I think that was like that was kind of that moment with my aunt has like been burned into my brain as like a fabulous memory of her kind of shaking me and be like, you can go this way. If you make these decisions, you could probably make a business out of it. So I was like, oh, maybe I guess I could. Um, and then the social
Wedding
media side of
videography,
things.
that's no joke though. I mean, wedding videography is like so high stakes because you don't get to do a reshoot of a wedding, right?
No, no, you're under pressure pretty much the whole day. You're go, go, go. That definitely taught me a lot about pacing and timing and just like being ready whenever there's no prep. It's like all of the prep happens the night before. You just pray your camera batteries are charged and you go for it. So yeah, that definitely taught me a lot of how to be snappy, how to just make quick decisions and make sure you're there for the important moments. Because yeah, you can't reshoot a first kiss, so those are important. But yeah.
But again, did you sort of you were doing an internship, so you got to see you were working for someone who knew how to shoot weddings and probably did a lot of
Yeah.
weddings, so they kind of taught you
Yeah.
the ropes.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, most of the time I was like a third shooter. They would have a first, a second, and then me as just someone who's probably replacing their batteries and just kind of following them around with like an umbrella if it's raining, just very minimal things to make their day easy. But it was so valuable because, I mean, that internship, most internships aren't paid in Canada at least, and it was just free education, really. Like that's kind of how I looked at it. It was like a whole summer, and each wedding that I was brought onto, I just learned so much. And when there wasn't any weddings, I would go into their studio, and this one of the lead guys, Mo, he would like show me his Premiere Pro shortcuts and trying to understand the editing side of things and the workflow of like how do you actually deliver a video and like what software and program do you make, do you upload things to so that your clients can see things nicely. And I got to observe so much through that. So yeah, I owe a lot to that. And it's all transferable. Like even though, yeah, it's weddings, you can use all of that in the commercial space too, in terms of how you present to a client or, onboarding and the editing side, all of that. So it's still relevant.
At what point did you kind of have your breakthrough where you came up through the internship, you started doing some work, but at what point you're like, wow, this is what I'm going to do with my career. I'm going to be a filmmaker. At what point was that in the process?
Um, I don't think there was ever like a pinnacle point. Usually it happens in this weird gradual way where something starts to shift and then you kind of look back at the last 2 years and you're like, oh wow, I that's what I accomplished. And because I feel like I'm always on, like I'm always going, there's always something to do. You're editing, your outreach, there's inbound, your emails, you're filming, your prep, like there's so many things going on that most of the time it's never this like day where you wake up and you're like, I'm gonna be a filmmaker. Like there's never ever that moment. And yes, maybe if you graduated from film school, it's like, okay, now this is like giving me, the thumbs up or the permission to go and like do the thing. But when you're freelance, it's literally all up to you. So I think the biggest maybe pivot or like transition moment was me deciding that I was going to step away from videography and become a DP. And that was like a really interesting pivot because, again, it wasn't like a single instance. It was just this weird collection of jobs that either I was getting and then started to feel like, you know what, I don't really want to say yes to these jobs anymore. I want to say yes to bigger jobs. So you start to like, instead of saying yes to everything, you start to unlearn that and you start to learn how to say no politely and like maybe refer, other people that are still in the videography space. But a lot of that transition moment happened because of spec work and doing things like just for the passion of it and trying to bring other people on board to do like something that, isn't in your portfolio or something that you want to try. Let's say you want to try a new piece of gear and that becomes like the reason for why you want to shoot a spec project. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that was the main like thing that got me thinking, okay, yeah, I can introduce myself properly as, hi, I'm Nicole and I'm a commercial DP. And it was simply because I had the reps, like I had enough practice and I had enough proof to be like, yes, this is actually what I do. And the practice not necessarily being paid all the time, but it's still work that I can show and say, yeah, like we can create this with a team of 2 to 8 to 25 people, depending on like what the scope is. But yeah, that's always like an interesting thing is like defining your own position or like your own title because there's yeah like no diploma or degree where it's like okay yep you're officially a doctor, you're officially a dentist. Like you just have to determine that yourself like based on your proof.
Now, you do a lot in sports, um, which is funny because that's kind of your beginning. You're a trainer for a sports team, and now you do a lot of video for sports. Again, it's similar to weddings. It's like a game. If you're shooting at a game, you only get one shot. What are the things you try to do when you're shooting at a basketball game or shooting at a hockey game? How do you approach those shoots?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've shot sports, to be honest. The last time I shot sports was a PWHL game. So that's like the Professional Women's Hockey League, like NHL equivalent, but for women. And yeah, the last year, um, there was probably 3 or 4 of us in the arena, like circling around. And it's great because sometimes they'll delegate or designate maybe 2 of the shooters to on ice coverage, and then the other 2 is just like fan coverage. And I was on fan coverage simply because of like the gear that I had. I didn't have any like long, super long lenses, but it's very transferable when you think about what is happening on the ice is going to have a reaction in the crowd. So there's a couple things like knowing the schedule for sure, always being mindful of like the clock, how many minutes you have left in a period, and trying to see like are the fans excited? Are they not? Like, what's the score? Like, being very aware of how the game works is very relevant. Because then you can just expect things. You can expect things before they happen. A lot of the time, too, one trick I learned from my friend Juan Morales, he works at the NHL. At any time that he's recording, you're rolling at all times, pretty much. Like, there's no reason for you not to be in case you miss a moment. That's probably the worst feeling. So the one thing that he taught me was if you're filming something and you know that you've been filming for a long time, like you have a really long clip and you get something good, as soon as you get something good, either cover your lens or like if you have your lens cap, great, but like either like cover your lens or do something like pointing at the ground. So when you're scrubbing through, you know that like, oh, okay, this was a good moment. Because there's no like marker yet in like, camera firmware to be like, okay, yes, this is, tag this in like the metadata. That would be a really nice feature. I think some cameras that maybe have it, but yeah, that was kind of one tip, I guess, in terms of shooting sport and like being ready at all times, just rolling whenever you can so you don't miss a moment. And then when it comes to post-production, tagging it somehow so that okay, this is one of the moments, in your long clips.
That's really smart. I know Juan. I met Juan at
Oh
Adobe
yeah.
Max.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you guys work together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Juan's a good friend of
He did
mine.
a cool video. He's a great filmmaker for high action sports.
Yes,
I
yeah, he's
really enjoy watching his
fantastic.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to learn anything about sport media, creative direction in sport, yep, go follow him. He's fantastic.
Um, Now I read about your background, and you got you got a grant to do a music video, and then suddenly you use that grant fund to hire like 18 people. Talk a little bit about that experience because that's a very big production with 18 people. How did that go down?
Yeah. So in Canada, I'm pretty sure it might just be Toronto. Yeah, there's like Toronto Arts Council, there's RBC MVP Music Prize. Like there's a lot of grants that happen in Canada, which is fantastic. It's just like a long application process. And with musicians specifically, it's like they have a deadline that they want to meet and they have an EP coming out or a single coming out, and usually the grant doesn't line up with like when they want to release it. Like the grant might come to fruition a year later and they've already moved on with like a different song. So yeah, it's a very interesting process. In that, I'm pretty sure maybe is it the Jordan Astra shoot that you're referencing? I don't
Yeah.
know which
Yeah.
one. That one, yeah. So I think I was producing that one. And Jordan Astra, fantastic artist. He was also kind of like an executive producer, so he was responsible a lot for writing the grants, and I was kind of brought in like after the grant had been awarded, so I was the one to kind of produce a lot of the stuff afterwards. And because it was all, grant focused, you can go at it a couple different ways. You can frame it as, okay, we have some money, not a lot of money, but we have some that can then cover gear, locations, expendables, food, like all of the necessary things that can go into to making something look like fantastic and like really high quality. And then having an honorarium for people who either don't necessarily have the experience with a certain camera or experience with a certain package truck, and using that as an opportunity to say, we're gonna get all of you guys to have something to put in your books afterwards and be able to promote this, music video, or this, like, it was almost more of like a short film almost. And kind of see who in the industry is like willing and interested to do that. So it's not exactly a spec, because I'm pretty sure there was an honorarium to everyone where it's like a very, very low thank you rate that would go towards like your gas for getting there, or, just like a thank you for your time basically. But yeah, you can go that route and, not necessarily pay for labor as much as you would have, but you're getting way more bells and whistles with, the actual production quality that you're going to get out of it. Or you go the opposite route and you do end up, paying people their fair wage, and those kind of, production companies or freelancers, they don't necessarily have that as their priority. Maybe they've already experienced what they want to experience. They're not necessarily in like a growth season or a growth phase, and their priority is profit. So maybe the production value goes down a bit, but you are still in really good hands. So not to say that the latter, you're not in good hands, because you definitely are, but it's just like a difference in priority, I think. And that was a really interesting and valuable conversation to have with Jordan, because morally, you want to pay people what they're worth. You don't want to, like, say, oh, like, we can only do it for this amount. It's never a great conversation to have. But I've tried to at least flip the script and more so present, hey, there's an opportunity, there's really great production value. Do you want to be part of this? And if it's grant funded, usually there's a lot more eyes on it, and there's, ability to market, and there's budget for ads, and like, pushing it a little bit more, especially through Jordan. He was really connected with Spotify, and like pushing all of those visualizers on, like, when you're on your Spotify, it's like the visualizer that plays behind the song. So yeah, that's kind of those were like the two options that you always have when it comes to grants. But it's pretty, I don't know, we're pretty fortunate to have access to those grants in Toronto, Ontario. It's just like an incentive the government has, and some other programs that are separate from the government. But for this one, I think specifically it was like Toronto Arts Council and the MVP RBC Music Prize. So yeah.
That's great. Let's talk about your business, because obviously you're you're a filmmaker, you're an artist, but you also have to build a pipeline of customers coming in. You have to, you need a constant flow of projects for yourself. How do you approach the business of filmmaking?
This is the side that I really like, honestly. I think there are filmmakers that, are 100% in it for the creative and the love of it, and that's fantastic. We need those people to exist, but also if you need to keep the lights on at your house, you need to somehow monetize and like present yourself as a actual running business. So, Kofi Yaboa, I don't know if you know of Kofi. He's a YouTuber. He's fantastic. Also Toronto based, also great friend. He had this analogy and it's always stuck in my head of like, if you want to get hired for a specific kind of work, think of your business like a restaurant, like something you would Google on Google Maps, where someone is searching for, I need a video, and just the equivalent, I want to eat at a sushi restaurant. You want to see photos of the food, you want to see good reviews, you want to see what the menu looks like, what the pricing looks like. So trying to like structure my business in a way that is very similar to a menu of a restaurant, where if you don't have something on the menu, you're not going to get hired for it, which is then where spec work comes in. So if you want to make something and you want to get hired for a specific thing, like for me, my kind of focus right now is a little bit more of a storytelling focus, but within the commercial space. And so my next spec that I'm thinking of and my gears are spinning is like, how can I make something? Maybe it's geared towards a brand, maybe not, but how can I make something that aligns with the kind of work, that I actually want to get paid for? Once you do that spec, it's then about promoting it and pushing it online, putting on your website, reaching out to either like producers or directors and saying like, hey, we just made this thing. Please go check it out. If you have any projects that like fall into this category or align with the shots that we maybe took, consider, let's work together. And it actually came to fruition. Weirdly enough, it takes a long time. That's another thing too, is if you are doing spec work, don't expect to just get hired the next week. It takes a lot of time to like talk with people and plant the seeds and like, consistently showing up on socials and staying top of mind. Last week I was lucky enough to shoot a campaign for Tinder for their like it was like a new social campaign about astrology matching. And I love how it turned out. It was actually so much fun. But the reason why I got that job, I think, and looking at their deck when the agency was pitching it to their to Tinder, they had, I think, 3 stills of my work, and they were all spec. Like all 3 things. One of them was a project for an app, so it was all phone-based stuff, so they could see like, okay, she can do over the shoulder phone scrolling, interesting POVs with a probe, like all of those things were incorporated in the spec. And like, I didn't get paid for the spec, but I have the menu item, and they selected the menu item and it was like, okay, this is, and a year before that, I did a spec for Bumble, and Bumble didn't buy it. We just did it for fun. It was like a Valentine's Day themed thing. And then that was like a reference in their deck. It's like, whoa, this actually does pay off. It just takes a little bit of time to, like have your name come up in conversation. So in terms of the business side, again, going back to your original question, it's like you have to have the menu, you have to have the items in order for people to then actually buy your stuff and hire you. And you just have to be a good person, honestly. It just goes such a long way. There's, you can teach anyone to use a camera. You can teach anyone about lighting or about the creative side, but like the business of filmmaking it's all about who you know, but it's truly like how you show up as a person, how your relationships can continue and grow and build. And maybe this person, goes away from filmmaking, but they end up in marketing. And then later down the line, they are like, oh yeah, Nicole does that thing. And then they hire you for something, or it could be completely irrelevant. It could just be within your friend circle, like it doesn't necessarily have to be all your filmmaking friends. It could be completely outside of that. So yeah, that's like a huge, I think, underrated thing, is just being a good person, checking up on people, genuinely caring about, what they're up to, what they're doing, how life is, hanging out outside of film. It's like so important to develop those relationships.
Now, with the specs that you shot, like the Tinder, the Bumble specs,
Yeah.
How did you get those out there so they ended up like in an advertising storyboard or in a treatment? I mean, how did these brands find your work?
So mostly it was probably from either TikTok or Instagram. In I think it was 2023. I post on TikTok like once every day, which is kind of insane. I don't know how I did that. Um, TikTok is now not a priority of mine just because Canada was like about to be banned and then it didn't and then I don't know. TikTok's an interesting platform right now. It went back and forth for a bit. As I'm sure you can relate with marketing and stuff. It's like which platform is cool right now? We don't know. But mostly Instagram. And I think they actually ripped a lot of those stills from my website, which I have the stills kind of listed in within each project. I have like the main video, then I have some stills, then I have BTS photos too, so people can kind of see, how we made it and, just feel a little more connected to the crew that was part of it. Um, so yeah, it's just being really consistent and pushing it on every platform. And I think what I would love to do if I can somehow create more time in my day would be to familiarize myself more so with LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn's going to be like a good hack for finding more agencies and more, houses and like companies versus individuals. I think Instagram, I'm tailored to the directors that need to hire a DP or the singular producers, that want to hire someone. And that's amazing. That's a lot of the way, honestly, is how I've gotten a lot of work is like through individuals themselves. But I think LinkedIn, that's like an untapped market for me. But I know a lot of people that have had success if they're posting their own work on there. There's lots of companies that have their eyes on LinkedIn. I don't know. Are you guys on LinkedIn a lot or?
Oh, we're all over LinkedIn.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
speaking
So
to you're speaking to Mr. LinkedIn right here.
Oh,
That's my
okay.
jam,
Let me
LinkedIn.
ask you questions then, because I need to learn.
No, I think your instincts are right because especially because you do a lot of commercial work and you're looking for brands and marketers and agencies. That's where that audience lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could see that being a really interesting place because I do think artists sort of shy away from LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
as a filmmaker and cinematographer, I see you as an artist because it's like corporate and it's not cool and it's cringe.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you're trying to reach marketing, advertising, those kind of professionals, that's where they live, that's where they share information. So
Yep.
you're
Exactly.
right because I think what I'm hearing from you is that you're good at showing up. Like you network a lot. You'll do spec projects and get them out there into the wild. You're hustling, and if you're going to spend the time hustling, you want to hustle where your prospective clients are, and LinkedIn's probably that place for you. But I want to talk about the specs you do, and so talk about that process because I think it's really interesting, especially for aspiring filmmakers. Um, you're not just going to get paid, right? You're not going to get like a big ad for a big brand out of the gate. You got to invest your own time, energy, money, and you got to do a lot of spec work that become your reel until you actually have real work that become your reel. Is that the approach?
Yeah. It's a little bit like fake it till you make it, I guess, right? Like you're trying out a different role. You're basically practicing. That's really what it is. I don't want to say fake it till you make it. It is truly practice, and I think Um, when it comes to spec work and how I'm investing, because I'm a DP, I actually have a little bit of an advantage. The fact that I want to do spec work as a DP because there are a lot of directors that have ideas, and that is the perfect marriage that you are always looking for. A director needs a DP needs a director. I can't really make a spec without someone who has either a script, a basic idea, a pitch deck, like some form of concept for me to then execute it. Yeah, I feel like my job is a translator. That's all I do. I translate the ideas into technical, into gear, into a little bit more of a producing brain of like how much is this going to cost? How many people do I actually need to execute it? Who am I going to bring on board? Like these are all the DP questions that I have learned to ask through spec work because every time I've done one, I learn a ton, I make a lot of mistakes, and there's no pressure because there's no client, and it's great. And that way I know what to do next time or how, there's a shoot we did for Loop earplug, like the earplug company, and it not necessarily was directed to them because it was very much out of their brand guidelines, and we kind of knew that going into it. We're like, we're not gonna pitch this to Loop because yeah, it was more of like a commercial narrative fusion spot. It was very like unique. But the whole goal of that shoot was for me to shoot day for night. So we were shooting from like 7 a.m. till I think the sun went down at like probably 5:30. It was the middle of winter, so it was very early. And we basically wanted to see if we could shoot everything and make it look like it was nighttime, even though it was broad daylight outside. So um, now that we have done that, that was like a 2-day spec project. My friend Brittany was the director on it, and the approach was she wanted more nighttime stuff in her reel, and so did I. I think this was like also after Severance was a really hot topic, and there were so many beautiful nighttime interior scenes, and I was like, how do they do that? Like, I want this really nice soft blue push and it looks like it's nighttime, but it doesn't look lit. Like, how do I do that? So, um, yeah, beautiful show. But basically, that was kind of the inspiration and the checkbox that we wanted to make sure that we got out of this spec project. Because yes, you are asking people for time and resources and all this. Like, it is a big like undertaking. But when you have a director who is kind of co-signing with you, you guys can split the cost. So if you have equal creative control and you both know like if we're agreeing that we have equal creative control, but we know that both of us are allowed to compromise in certain areas, it feels fair to just split the cost that way. So, if I'm putting up X amount of dollars, they can match me, and having a really, really transparent conversation before you start to say, are you in a financial position to like invest in this? And, is your priority profit right now? Would you turn down this for a paid job? Like, how committed are you? There's lots of like real questions to ask because then your expectations can be, in one place and the reality is in another. So, but all of that is also just communication. It's just practice. Like anytime that I now am working on an actual commercial shoot, like the perfect example would be Tinder. The lesson I learned from the Loop commercial and about asking, finances, what kind of expectations are we working with? It's the same question I'm asking on an actual paid job. I'm asking the agency how much, like, what kind of production value are you expecting from this? Is this like a social campaign and your heart's not really in it? So like, let's just shoot it and we're going to work with the bare bones? Or is the client going to be on set? Do you want this? Do optics matter? Do you want a really nice, big, shiny, fancy camera? Do you need this to go on broadcast, which means I should be shooting, 6K resolution plus, like, you know what I mean? What's the sandbox? So that's like a very important question. I feel like maybe I have strayed from your original question. It was something to do about specs and like how to
No,
how to
I think
navigate
you got
it.
it. No,
Okay,
I
cool.
think I think it's just very interesting that you're getting projects because you're doing all these spec ads and you're investing in yourself and your business so you can get
hmm
these bigger projects, and that seems to be working very well.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'll mention too is like I think because I've done a good chunk of specs and have gotten paid work where I will make sure to rehire those same people that had come on board, without paid labor or whatever. Like I am very diligent about going through that crew list from a spec and saying, okay, I have a paid job. Can you, like, this is, I'm going to bring you on because you did me a solid, So it's just trying to reciprocate that energy and, um, putting them on, making sure like everyone does actually get paid at some point. Um, and I think it's probably hard, if you haven't done a spec before and you're listening to this, it's like, how do I get people on board? Like, that feels kind of overwhelming. There's some of my spec projects, it's literally just like me and two other friends. Some spec projects are like 20 people. It totally ranges on like what, in terms of how much, finances, how much do you want to invest? How much time do you have? And yeah, like what your goals are. Like if your goal as a DP is to practice your leadership and have a bigger team and actually practice like what that feels like, you have to delegate to the lighting team, you have to delegate to camera and feel that kind of pressure and be as prepared as possible during pre-production. It's just like unmatched because like when it comes to paid projects now, I'm not stressing the night before. I'm not thinking, "Oh my God, how do I do this? This feels overwhelming." It's like we've done it before. We've done it in a low pressure environment. That box has been checked. The only thing that's changed is the fact that you're dealing with client expectations. That's quite literally the only difference, where you now have to manage, what their expectations and translate like their actual vision. But the rest of it is like rinse and repeat. So yeah, I feel like if there are moments, if you are listening to this and you're either videographer transitioning into becoming a cinematographer, or you're getting into directing and you still have that like gut butterfly feeling the night before and you're like, oh, like I feel unprepared. It's probably because you are, which is not a horrible thing, right? Like it still feels like maybe that feeling is excitement and you're just thinking, oh, maybe this is a bad feeling, but it actually is a good feeling. It means you're growing, which is good. You're doing something different. You're jumping into something that is maybe pushing the limits, or you're testing like how much you can actually do. But with spec work, that feeling just gets taken away. Like you know exactly what to do, and every project will have its thorn. Every project will have a random dart that was thrown in it and it's like, nope, this is an issue now, and you're like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that. But because everything else is in place, you've done your pre-production, you've done as much prep as possible, you have the energy and like the calm energy to accept the problem and go to your resources and figure it out with your crew, or even on your own if you have that capacity to just like, spit off, okay, this is the answer. Let's just go, let's do it this way instead, because this way isn't going to work anymore. And going into it with like that calm approach, it's just going to save you so much stress. So yeah, it's not even to like, again, going back to your point, it's not even about the fact that I will get hired based on this cool menu item that I've put on my website. It's all like internal too. It's like you've practiced dealing with stuff under stress, under pressure. You have this confidence now that, before a shoot, you're no longer worried about all those other things. It's like we've done this. There's no stress. If you are stressed, you have people to go to and ask the right questions.
Yeah, it's in sports they call it getting your reps, right? It's practice.
Yep, exactly.
And it's in filmmaking too. It's you're getting ready for shoot day. You're getting ready for game day. And that's the way to show up on a set when you have a client paying you a lot of money, and be confident because you've been there before, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Which is so relatable to sports. It's so funny you brought that up. Like it's just practice. Yep.
Now, one thing I find interesting with filmmakers and cinematographers is, there's so many different looks. I used to work in advertising, and we would have a commercial we're working on, and then our producer sends over 10 different reels to look at for different options for directors for the commercials. And you look at one reel, you're like, oh, that's beautiful. I really love the style. And you look at the next reel and you're like, wow, that's beautiful. And I love that style. And then the third one, you're like, wow, that's an amazing look. But they're all different. Like none of them look the same. For you, how do you come up with your style? Because I'm sure if I'm looking at your reel, everything has they're very different subjects that you're shooting, but they have a similar aesthetic to it. So how do you develop that
Hmm.
over the years?
Uh, Two things. One, a really good colorist. A colorist will completely transform your images. Shout out to Jordan from The Vanity. She's at a post-production house here in Toronto, and she's colored all my specs, and every single time there's a paid job or opportunity, it's her name is in the hat every single time. Ideally, she colors everything. Sometimes it doesn't work, but um yeah, a colorist will completely transform, especially as a DP, like the way that you can not necessarily like fully relight an image, but if you want certain things to stand out in your image, if you need to tweak things and like that is a lot of where the look comes from is color for sure. Um, and then the second thing, it's not as glamorous as an answer, but a lot of it comes down to budget. It's like your style will come from the resources that you are awarded, you know? If I have a really good friend and they have an Alexa Mini, that becomes my style because that's the resource that I have. And there's a very specific look when you shoot on that kind of camera versus like an FX3 or versus, any other camera really. So when it comes to, I guess, the way that I have been brought up in the industry, it's all been a question of what can you afford? Like, here's our budget. How can you shoot this in the best way? And how is this the most, can you make this budget work, And sometimes I'm shooting campaigns on autofocus glass because that's all we can afford. But that's where the style comes from, Like that's the lensing, the body, like all of that stuff it lends itself to the style. And the style can also be translated in camera movement. And when you think about, someone my size shooting on, let's say I had access to like a Venice and crazy primes and all this stuff, it's like I need an easy rig. Do I have resources to shoot on an easy rig? That will then lend itself to more handheld shots and that look. So that's like a whole other style. Do you shoot more handheld? Am I skilled on one of those Segway things? Absolutely not. So that's not part of my my style. So it's part of like it's not a sexy answer, but it's the truth where it's like if you have access, then your style will reflect that because you've had the opportunity to try all these cool things and you'll naturally gravitate to something that you like or your taste or like the movies you watch or whatever that will influence what you choose. But if you don't necessarily have the choice, you just go with the best thing that you can afford or that you have access to. So, yeah, that's kind of my my answer. It's definitely not as cool and flashy, but yeah, I think that lends itself a lot. Like even look at like someone who shoots for Red Bull or shoots, like those really high performance adrenaline junkie things. Their style is going to come from the confines of that shoot. They're gonna use GoPros. They're gonna use drones. Like that's all their style, and it's just the confine of like what they're shooting, the subject matter. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my answer.
What I like about what you said, though, a lot of it's based on equipment and that's constrained by budget, but also it seems like with you, you've assembled your team, even though they don't all work for you and your production company, but you've assembled a team of people that you work with consistently.
Hmm.
And because you work with them consistently, you know their style, they know your style. And then that's going to kind of over time determine the look of everything you're filming. Even if you're filming on less expensive equipment, or, you'll still have probably a similar look and feel just because you're using the same team for lighting and for coloring. And is that right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think my lighting team is pretty consistent. Like I have a good group of people I always ask to come out, and yeah, I feel like most people know that, like I like a really hard backlight, and that's gonna be like in the back pocket every single time, every shoot. There's gonna be some of that regardless of if we have expensive gear or not. You're right. It's like the approach or the style of how I actually will shoot something. A lot of it sometimes too is just like it's like a gut feeling, or it's like it feels a little bit more instinctual than like an actual decision of like every shot I shoot this way and it's like X plus Y equals Z. It's sometimes when you're on set, it's just a feeling, or sometimes I make decisions because of past decisions and I know that something has worked in the past. So I gravitate towards that. And it's all these like mini decisions that happen, and it's the feeling of, yeah, this is the right direction, and if I'm framing up for a shot on my phone or something, it's like, yeah, I'll use this lens. And it's such a quick little decision, but it's based off of like a domino effect of all kinds of other things, that have happened in the past. But it's never like X plus Y equals Z. It's never, that's my style. It's just like it's a little bit more of an ebb and flow, I think, because each project's so different too. But yeah, you're definitely right. When it comes to crew and like hiring similar people along the way, you'll definitely notice a big difference there.
Now, I want to talk about music a little bit because in a lot of the work, I think
Naturally.
music really plays a big role. Well, you know, every filmmaker has a different approach to music. Some it's just like it's all about the visuals. They don't even think music until the end, and they're in editing. Others are like they start with a song, and
Mm,
then the song really drives what they want to do with the story. What's your approach to music? Obviously, there's tons of music out there that you can use in your projects. How do you find the right song? How do you select it? Tell us about how you go about scoring the work you're doing.
yeah. So on most of the smaller social campaign stuff where I am actually editing, so most of the time, I wouldn't say most of the time, maybe like 50-50. Some projects I'm literally just shooting, but there are a huge chunk of projects where I'm also the editor. Um, there's a project I'm working on today. I actually just sent off an email, and most of the work that I'm doing is obviously paid campaign ads, so you have to use non-copyright. And I obviously use Soundstripe. Every single email that I send to my clients, when I say like, here's the first look, I always send without sound. Like I'll give them the first pass. And from there, based on like the story that we're telling or like the language, sometimes I'll actually just give the client the link and say, I have Soundstripe. This is like a really easy way to search. Also, I know I'll naturally plug this because I'm really excited about this feature. You can just copy a link to your favorite song now, which is incredible. Like I can just copy a Spotify link if I want a song that sounds like something Sabrina Carpenter sings, or I don't know, the Black Keys. Like it could be anything. Um, I can copy and paste that into Soundstripe, and it'll give me, recommended songs that sound very similar, and it was really good. Like I remember I pasted the other day like a really obscure this track, and it was kind of there was some like synth stuff, but it was also rock, and the first two were like spot on. It's like, wow, that's going to be very beneficial. So I'm excited to use that feature. But I actually told my client that is a new feature. So if you have music, that you want to use, feel free to use that, because it'll just narrow our search so much. There's so much selection. So it's like, how do you find what you are looking for? I think that's the coolest. That's probably the coolest update you guys have had. So I'm very excited about it because it'll just saves us time, but it also actually gets to the song that we want.
Yeah, I love it because picking the song is so hard,
Yeah.
and especially as you're doing client work. These are generally business people, right? They're
Yeah.
they're not in the production catalogs. They don't know what the options are. We have all these
Hmm.
great artists in our catalog, but generally no one is going to know who they are really.
Yeah.
Um, by saying, all right, what's the sound that would go along with this? And it's like, oh, you know what? You know, um, you know, uh, Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. That's the vibe I think works for this. All right, let's plug
Hmm.
it in. And then you get, a list of 100 songs, and ranked. Like the songs that are at the top are a closer match. And then you
Yeah,
can go all the way down. Yeah, just a super easy way to find, a sound that you're looking for and have a song that you could actually use in a commercial as opposed to a Sabrina Carpenter song where I guess you can use it, but you would have to go to the major label and get all the rights and pay, probably millions of dollars for that song. Whereas, you could find
exactly.
that sound in a catalog like Soundstripe, and it's, yeah, really easy way to search.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like most of the time if it's more of a creative thing and there's a little bit more emotion, there's more of like a story, there's like a beginning, middle, end, then I'd probably do song first and try to find the feeling and then go into shoot. But if it's more of the sit down interview and like I just have to match brand guidelines, that's also such a real thing. Like it not every piece is this like fantastic storytelling emotion driven thing. Sometimes it's just like a fun, really poppy ad, and you need something, some sort of song in the background. And at first, you would think, like, oh, the music isn't a priority, but sound is actually the thing that will make people want to keep watching. If your sound is horrible and your video is great, people are going to swipe through, you know? So I think, even when it comes to those poppy commercials that are they're 15 seconds, it's all about a product, the music will still lend such a good hand to the production value. And honestly, I use a lot of your sound effects too. So there was a commercial we did for Basque wine, and there was like a lots of pouring, lots of fizzing, lots of like plops of lemon and like raspberry and stuff. So I always use your sound effects for that too. That's always just, the last part of the process. But yeah, it doesn't have to be like a boring corporate song. It can be cool and like high value production music when you're, doing something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
as a filmmaker, I'm sure you are aware of AI and the impact of AI on video and music. How are you thinking about AI in your work?
That's a good question. How am I thinking about AI? I think I'm scared. Um, no, I think AI when it is like assistive, it's fantastic. I've used Soup a bunch of times to find music. I always use ChatGPT if I'm like forming thoughts or like forming a YouTube script or something that like I need to condense things. The assistive version of AI is very helpful, and I do lean on that. Um, but yeah, when it comes to generative stuff, it probably freaks a lot of us filmmakers out because we don't want that to take our jobs away, you know? So it's like I think it's something that I need to not be scared of. I need to like learn it. I need to be able to like be okay with it, know that it's going to stay because that's where a lot of the industry I think is going to go. When it comes to budget cuts, when it comes to like, actually, perfect example, there was a wellness spa that reached out to me, I don't know, a week ago or so now, and they didn't even have their walls up. Like they're just, launching their social media, their brand colors, all that. And the client actually suggested, like, oh, maybe because, you can't actually come in and film yet, but can you make something with AI or even stock footage that like would resemble our brand colors? And I think that was one of the like first times that I have had a client suggest like, oh, maybe we should actually use AI in this case. And it was a pretty good idea because nothing's built. So how can I generate videos without traveling somewhere or stock footage, I guess. But yeah, so it's a very interesting time. I think the quality of like, AI generation is obviously going to improve exponentially and it's going to happen quick. But I also think there will be brands and companies that like will adopt certain parts but won't adopt other parts, and it might not be as quick of a changeover. Like, I don't know if companies will be super willing to like invest in it right away and change their whole structure over. Because I don't know, there's trends are always like up and down, and knowing that something is AI will sometimes like create a distrust, with your audience, especially visuals, right? So, yeah, I'm thinking that some of the brands that are more focused on like human lifestyle experience driven, products, those will hopefully stay out of the AI world because they'll know their customer base appreciates real storytelling and like, that feeling of just like natural organic capture. But when it comes to like product shots and it's like it's the same can of whatever drink and you want it to pop open and have this explosion, like what's stopping those companies from doing that? I guess nothing. I don't know. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it too, because I that's just my honest opinion, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think what's interesting for AI video, specifically for someone like you, is that you could actually create a new product line out of that for you. So of course, you want to do the work where you're shooting and you're on site, and that's going to be the best possible quality. But I think your clients are also going to need a cinematographer who could craft a great shot using AI tooling and can get the right angles and get the right look and mood. So potentially it could be a new business opportunity for you as you learn these tools, because it's the same skill set, right? You're taking a cinematographer's eye and you're just using it instead of shooting real people on location, which is super expensive. You're doing it using these tools. So for the right client in some cases, and probably your spa that you were talking about, they probably don't have huge budgets to go shoot on location and so probably this could be a great option for them
Yeah,
in some ways.
exactly.
But there's still having that skill that you have as a director, as a cinematographer. I mean, I think it gives you actually pretty big opportunity and to use your skill, but then enable it with these AI tools.
I'm excited to like open my mind a little bit more and actually dive into some of these models because it's gonna be the reality. Like that's, we've used VFX forever. Where does the line get crossed where people are offended and people aren't, where that's kind of where it's the moral behind it. That's where I'm torn, but you're right. If I can flip my mindset and think like, there's a huge opportunity where the prompting is just as important to get the right image than, even when it comes to storyboarding. Like that was a huge thing on our Tinder campaign where all of the storyboards were AI. And honestly, it helped me so much to like actually go from whatever the director had typed in, like, close up shot of girl with coffee mug that says it starts with a sign and have the, all of these, like, all that verbiage, I think that would be a huge skill set. And it clearly, whatever all the images that it spit out were like a great reference point. So yeah, there's a whole world out there that honestly I think like the curtain has been closed for a while and just like, oh, I know that this is gonna happen, so I'm gonna have to eventually open that curtain and just, get used to like what that workflow looks like so that I'm still good, but yeah, it'll help those clients that just don't have the budget to just, go on location. So
Yeah, and as long as they're using human-made music in the AI commercials, I'm good with it.
yeah, exactly, right?
Well, Nicole, this has been a great discussion. I want to give you the final question. I ask this to all the guests. If you can go back and give 18-year-old Nicole Shapiro at university, give her one piece of advice or wisdom, what would that be?
The piece of advice I would give 18-year-old Nicole would be to just continue to be a good person and to trust your instincts, because I feel like whenever I have doubted my instincts or my gut, it's always been right. It's like if your inner voice is telling you, you know what, you should go and do this wedding job. Like you should go and do it, and the outside voices are like, no, like, you went to school for this. Like, why are you giving the kinesiology side up? If I listened to that, I wouldn't even be here. So it's that gut feeling, or like those inner thoughts are clues to like help you make decisions and help you, find your path. If you're creative and you're like, should I become an editor? Should I become a director? Should I go into sound design? Like, what do I do? There's clues, like you might feel lost, but it's probably because you're just not in tune with like what your, inner voice is, and going on those walks and going for drives and not, listening to podcasts or just like being with your thoughts. I feel like that's probably the best advice, is to just, make time for boredom, make time to allow yourself to hear your own thoughts. If you are in that weird struggling, question of, do I pivot to this? Do I go here? That's what I would tell her, because I think, yeah, she'd probably more confidently be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do this. And maybe, maybe I'd be even farther down the road than I am now. Who knows? But yeah, definitely listen to your intuition.
That's great. Great advice. Nicole, how could people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about working with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at NSHAPS, NSHAPS, and on YouTube it's my name, Nicole Shapiro. TikTok I don't use that much, but I'm pretty sure it's nshaps.prod, I believe, PROD. And yeah, most of the time I'm posting on Instagram. That's like my main platform. And soon you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn.
Coming soon to
But not yet.
LinkedIn, Nicole Shapiro, filmmaker, cinematographer. Yes, that's great. And do you have a website?
Yes, it is nshaps.com.
Okay, excellent. Well, Nicole, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. If you like this podcast, make sure to subscribe on our YouTube page or listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining us, and join us next time for the next Soundstripe session. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Soundstripe is the leading music licensing platform, offering the highest quality music produced by award-winning artists and innovative tools to find the perfect song for your project. Soundstripe has over 100,000 audio tracks along with sound effects and video assets. We provide comprehensive licensing coverage, whether it's a broadcast TV spot, social media video, or podcast. Soundstripe helps turn an average video into an unforgettable story. Learn more and sign up for a free account at soundstripe.com.